Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for attending this VantagePoint webinar for May 2024. My name is Webb Myers, and I've had the pleasure of being VantagePoint's customer support lead for the last 20 years. This tips and tricks presentation will be going on a whirlwind tour of some of the lesser known features in VantagePoint. If you can, I invite you to open up the VantagePoint application at this time so you can follow along. I'll be going pretty fast, so to start off, I'm going to highly recommend that you visit our YouTube channel and subscribe if you haven't already. This presentation will be broken up and posted there for future reference, just in case you find yourself wondering, where was that button again? Also, just as a reminder, everything in VantagePoint should have a help file or a help page if you just push your F1 key or click the help buttons located on most of the dialogues. Also, our manual is very well written and covers more than I will ever have time to. Finally, we are always available to help via the help desk at searchtech.com email address or via the Contact Help Desk button on VantagePoint's Help tab. Today I want to focus on some of the more overlooked tools in VantagePoint. These are those little things that aren't fancy enough to make it into any product demos, but they can make a big difference in your day-to-day usage. We'll start at the very top of the screen with the Quick Access Toolbar. Then we'll move all the way off the bottom of the screen to your keyboard and discuss hotkeys and other keyboard shortcuts. Next, I'll cover some of the lesser known commands on the various right-click menus in VantagePoint. And finally, we'll move on to the scripts menu, what it has by default and how to modify it to add additional scripts. If we have time, I'll attempt to go through and demonstrate some of those scripts in the scripts menu. If we have any final time after that, maybe we'll have a chance for some open Q&A. For our first stop, we don't even need to open a data file. That little row of icons across the top of the application is called the Quick Access Toolbar. It will always be visible, and it's a great place to put buttons that you always want access to. By default, we have a Save button and some buttons for navigating sheets. There's no need to stop with just those, though. Click the little down arrow bar on the far right and select More Commands. Let's see. From here, you can add any button from any of the tabs. Now, I'm going to specifically recommend going to the Report tab and adding that Export Image button. You should be able to quickly create screenshots no matter what you're doing. My second recommendation is the Add Detail Window button from the View menu. I'll often close all the detail windows to get myself some more space. With the button in the Quick Access Toolbar, I don't have to switch to the View menu to get them back. Does this seem a little complicated? It takes all of 10 seconds. Let's see. So, up here, more commands. I'll go to the Report tab, Export Image, boop, that'll put it over there. And I can get to the Add Detail Window button from the View tab. For me personally, I've gone ahead and added the Run a Script button. You can really add whatever you want to the Quick Access Toolbar. All right, Quick Access Toolbar bonus round time. There are a couple more commands hiding in that Customize menu that can be handy for anybody working on a laptop screen. First is the Show Below the Ribbon button. That will bump the Quick Access Toolbar below the tabs. Let's see. So it looks like this. Besides saving you maybe 100 pixels worth of mousing, I find it makes the icons a little bit easier to target if you're ever using VantagePoint with a touchscreen. But if you don't like it, it's always easy to put back. Second is the Minimize the Ribbon button. If you really are strapped for space, this will give you just a little bit more space in the middle for those big visualizations. The tab names will always stay visible, and clicking on them will bring up the individual ribbons, but they will hide themselves if you click away. Again, it's easy to turn off. And now we're back to normal. There's also, as we transition into talking about hotkeys, while we're on the subject of the ribbon, if you push the Alt key on your keyboard, it will activate those ribbon buttons, and you can use the left and right arrows to change tabs. Once you've found a tab you want, if you want to stay on the keyboard, you can push the down arrow to select that ribbon and then use left and right arrows to select from the different buttons and functions on that ribbon. Now on to the hotkeys. Of course, VantagePoint has all of the classics that you would expect to find in any Windows application. Select all, find, copy, paste, print, open file, save file, the usual. Now, hopefully you've also discovered the quick shortcuts for new data sets. Control-I to import raw data, and Control-N to create a sub-data set from whatever you have selected. Now for navigation, Control Home will always take you back to the summary sheet. Control Page Up and Page Down will navigate left and right in your open sheets. Control Y is a handy one. It'll take you up to that Quick Access Toolbar list of sheets, and you can actually type to filter to jump around to see all of the lists. L for lists, M for matrices and maps, etc., etc. Control W, just like in your browser, will close a sheet, and Control L will create a list. Control plus the scroll wheel, if you're using a mouse, will zoom in and out. And if you have the record view open, Control left and right will toggle you back and forth from next to previous record in the title view. Finally, there's a couple of extra special ones that work from a list. The Control G will open up the Edit Groups menu. Control Shift G will turn on the Add Selection to Group. And Control R will bring up the List Comparison menu. Now, these aren't the only hotkeys in VantagePoint. To see the full list, start with the App button in the corner, that's the little compass. Open up the Options menu and go to the Hotkey tab. You can assign a hotkey for any command or button. You can search in that type to filter commands box. Click in the press new hotkey area and then press your keyboard shortcut, in this case Control-Shift-P, and click Assign. Now, you can add as many hotkeys as you want, but when you're closing the options menu, make sure you close with the OK button and not the X. The OK will save all of your changes. The X will discard them. Now, in VantagePoint, if you ever find yourself thinking, I wonder if I can do something, try right-clicking wherever you are. One of our programmers has always liked right-click menus, and there are a lot of really useful tools that are only accessible via right-click. Let's start at the beginning of most analyses with the summary screen. Most of the items are fairly standard and often demonstrated. Making lists, running refine tools, copying, renaming, deleting. There's a few items that you can only get to via the right-click menus. For example, set data type is used mostly to change the sorting behavior of fields. The general data type will sort items alphabetically. The number and year data types will sort numerically. Links will have an extra right-click commands to actually follow those hyperlinks in your browser. Images will attempt to display in the record view, etc., etc. The meta field and category meta tags are from old features that are no longer in use in VantagePoint. Now, meta tags were originally just a way to signal a generic type of a field. Different databases might use different names, but most bibliographic databases will share a lot of similar fields. Title, abstract, publication type, source, organization, person, these sorts of things. Over time, we've used meta tags to make VantagePoint a little bit smarter about what fields it suggests for cleaning and analysis. For example, list cleanup looks for meta tags like organization or person when suggesting a default cleanup algorithm. The training fields are used by the classifier. The country fields are used for the world map. Now, usually data types and meta tags should be set by the import filter when you import the data. But if you imported an Excel file, you would have to set these manually to get the most out of your data. Now that view statistics is a column on the summary sheet, or now the percent coverage is a column on the summary sheet, view statistics is mostly useful if you want to get an exact count of just how many records there are missing in a field, or to check on the average items per record count to see just how multi-valued that multi-valued field is. Field history is a brand new and item in version 16. It's so exciting that it was actually covered fairly extensively in our What's New in version 16 webinar that I suggest you check out our YouTube channel to see. So I'm not going to repeat it here other than to remind you that, as with many functions, you get to it via the right-click menu on the summary sheet. Now in a list, the list context menu has a lot of the standard things standard commands that you've seen demonstrated before, even if you haven't used them yourself. Still, there is a few that don't always make it into quick demos. For example, useful ones like invert selection. This will take whatever rows and rows you have selected, unselect those and select everything else to kind of, if you want to knot whatever it is you got selected. Group using stemming and or. Let's go ahead. Let me just switch over and demonstrate these. So group using stemming and an or usually works best with a set of NLP terms or other keywords. It will run the words through a stemmer to remove, to cut it down, and then it will either grab all of the terms that have both of the words, in this case automobile and drivers. There we go. Or this group using stemming or will grab all the terms that have either automobile or drivers. Again, notice that it catches plurals and other things because of the stemming engine. Add and remove colors is a good way for applying a heat map to our data. As we add the colors, well, removing the colors will make them disappear. As we add them with the Make Heat Map button, you can have your choice of color. Edit item text is useful but dangerous. You can go in and directly edit the data. The dangerous part is if you edit the item text to something that already exists, it will actually combine those items. So there was another automobiles entry down below, and now it's gone away and they've been combined into this one term. Edit item hyperlink is a new one. You can do things like add a hyperlink behind any list item. So uspto.gov if these were patents. And now you can follow those links and they'll open up in your default browser. Search, speaking of your default browser, let's get a set of corporate sources. So search will open up your default browser and point it at Google, LinkedIn, Wikipedia, etc. To perform a quick web search for whatever you have selected in the list. That said, but wait, there's more. If you right-click on the column headers, you'll get a few more options. The sorting makes sense. Let me get back to my list of descriptors. Sorting on any particular term makes sense. The reason you would want to do it there instead of just double-clicking on a group is if you double-click on the group, you'll notice it selects the group. For a small set, this isn't a problem. For a big set of hundreds of thousands of terms in a very large data set, it can actually take up to a minute to sort everything and then fill all the titles into the title window. So for very large sets, sorting via right-click can be handy. Sorting the ungrouped items to the top is useful if you're trying to go through and categorize every term in a list. This is a quick way to pull up to the top everything that you haven't put into a group yet. Finally, there is a collection of tools, much like the ones in the summary view, to open lists and then run basic refine tasks on whatever the open list is. Now, on to the matrix. You've got your basic copy, select all, zoom, new data set, etc. But you also have a couple of special ones for a matrix. If we add our row or column selections to a group, so for example, I've got my list of authors, or I select this column and I add the row selections to the group, it's going to create a new group in my row field. So in this case, that would be the authors. I can call this Texas Tech. And now, see that hotkey? And now, if we open up the list of authors, we have a group from our set. Same works with add column selections. If you've got things selected, but this would create a new group in the corporate source field in this case. Toggle heat map works just like in a list. Again, you can pick your color. Reset the matrix if I've done a bunch of sorting and maybe flooding. Resetting a matrix is a quick way to get things back to where we started. Finally, we have list cells in matrix. What this will do is create kind of a basic pivot table or flat file of only the of all of the pairs. Let's see, so I'm going to want to sort on matrix value, and so this will bring the highest valued cells up to the top, and each row is that row and column pair, along with columns for what is the total number of records for that author, total number of records for that column and row. Mostly useful for certain applications that need a flat file when you're copying things out to Excel. But that was the matrix list. Now, detail windows have a slightly different context menu depending on whether you are looking at a list or looking at a chart. Of course, you can toggle between them with the show chart or show list version. The list version of the context window has all those search options just like you're in a regular list. The chart version has options to change the different chart styles as well as sort the items in the chart and export them out to a graphic. In practice, that would look like, let's see, let's get a list of, let's see, publication years. So publication years, because of their data type, will have a default view as a list. I could change that to a different bar chart or a line chart, and then quickly save that chart out as a JPEG. There's also options to go in and change all of the line colors and the default colorings in the year chart in the detail window options. And our final context menu that I want to talk about is the title window context menu. Now, the title window, we don't usually think about it this way, but you can actually select, the ones that are blue is the one that if you double click on, it'll open the record view. But you can select multiple items in that title window. Besides opening multiple records up in the View Records window, then you can do things like add these selected records to a group. If you're adding from the title window, you can add it to a group in pretty much any field. You just got to be careful, a little bit careful about what you're doing. So let's see. Let's make a new group of titles. I'll say selected authors. And I will say add to my selected authors group. I'll go ahead and click this. And so now, if I open up a list of titles, I now have that selected authors group that it's created in that title set. Now, I can also do things like, if I happen to know these two are duplicates, I could tag one of them to be omitted from new data sets, put the handy X by there. If I was in a set with classifications, I can open that up. Here, let me go grab one. There we go. So this is a data set that has classifications that we can assign via that right-click menu. I can call these items texture. And once I've done things like sorting and classifying and omitting the ones that I don't like, we can also sort the title window either alphabetically, as is the default, or pull up to the top any titles that are classified, have notes added to via the record view, or are marked for omission. So this is a handy way to take advantage of all those little icons that we've added in version 16. Now, on to the scripts menu. The scripts menu is found on the Analyze tab. It mostly has tools that are useful, but aren't really exciting enough to warrant a button on a ribbon. The names of these scripts are fairly self-explanatory, but if you hover over them, a longer description will appear. When we're running these scripts, we are running an actual .vpm macro file that by default is found in your VantagePoint's macros subdirectory. We use, should you ever be inclined, if you're familiar with VBA scripting for Excel, we use VBScript. It's the same scripting language. Finally, You can also, instead of picking directly one of the scripts on the menu, you can click that Run a Visual Basic Script option at the top and manually load up a VPM file. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, occasionally, if you ask me a question about can VantagePoint do this something, if it's easy, I might just respond by sending you a little short script that'll do what it is you're asking. And we'll also do small project work that will result in a script. So you may have some custom scripts that either we've made or you've made yourself. It's also handy in the case of the Make Thesaurus script because this script has particular options in it. For example, overwriting the existing thesaurus or appending to items to the end of the thesaurus, the type of matching and whether or not it should protect regular expression characters. So this has a few options that you can just directly change in that edit and run script dialog before you push the run button. If it's the kind of thing that you're going to change fairly often, you can even click the Save As button and save your own version of the Make Thesaurus button. So, for example, Make Thesaurus an append version of it. Finally, right next to that Run a Script button is the Edit Script menu button. The Edit Script menu button will let you customize that script's dropdown. You can move your favorites to the top, add or remove scripts from the menu, or even assign a quick hotkey to your favorite script. Let's say. So just to demonstrate, so here's our Run a Script menu. When I roll over, it brings up the little descriptions. Some of them are a little bit longer than others. And let's see, Run a Script will let me open up a whole list of scripts that are in your VantagePoint macros directory. Now, I've probably got a few more than most people do, but this is the kind of thing that you can go in and edit directly. Finally, that Edit Scripts menu, for example, I've just added the script that frankly is my favorite, the Create All Lists script, which is probably hiding in your macros directory, even if it's not already on your script menu. So you can go ahead and try out the Add a Script button right now and see if you can add that one. I find it useful when I open up a new data set. It's nice to just go ahead and create all the lists and just do a quick data quality check of all the fields. Usually takes less than a minute to open them all up and then Control W across through the set to close them all back up. Finally, I should also point out our little Add Separator button. That looks like these little vertical bars. So in case you want to make particular groups of scripts as you're going, as you're editing your script menu. Now, the scripts menu is not a static thing. Besides editing the script menu and adding items manually, there is also the Help Visit Downloads page button. Let's see. So Visit Downloads page will have a script tab. If it's working correctly, it will only list the scripts that you do not already have. So for example, mine is not listing the Create All Lists script because I already have that one installed. The notes and requirements will offer those descriptions of the script. so you can evaluate whether or not you need them. And clicking the Install button should add it to your scripts menu. So here we go. It says scripts. There is a handy script to combine all open data sets, which does exactly what it says it does. Instead of data fusioning two at a time, it combines them all at once. And now that I've done that, that combine all open datasets has been added to the bottom of my scripts menu. Now, on to the scripts. What do these things actually do? Well, as I said, most of them are named fairly well, but let's try them out where we can. The first one, plot a list from Excel, does just what it says. If you start with a selection in a list, it's basically the exact same as copying and pasting that into a sheet in Excel and then running Excel's chart wizard on it to get a quick chart. From here you can change the chart type and do all the usual Excel things with it. The plot matrix in Excel is basically the exact same thing, only it starts from a matrix. So if I had a matrix of top 10 family countries by year, I'd want to sort it, select only the years I was interested in, and then plot matrix in Excel. And there we go. It tries out a couple of different types of column, but basically it's just as before. It's copy and paste into Excel and running the chart wizard. Make pivot chart in Excel is very handy if you like pivot charts in Excel. These days we usually steer people towards our own pivot tool, which keeps the data in VantagePoint in a sheet and lets you click on things and bring up the actual records. The patent classification tree used to have a button, but our reporting tab was getting kind of crowded, and so we moved it into a let's see, and so we moved it into the run a script menu. Like many of the more intense scripts, this one shrinks VantagePoint just so that your screen doesn't blink distractedly and slow you down. But it's a nice little visualization if you have something nice and regular like CPC codes or IPC codes, something that can be easily reduced to a nice hierarchy. Export groups to Excel or export groups to text is again just what you'd expect it to be. Let's go back to my list of descriptors. I can run a script, export groups to Excel. It asks me if I want to use my open list. I can export everything, or in this case, if I say no, I can say no, I don't want to export empty groups, and then it will step me through each individual group and ask if you want this one, do you want this one, do you want this one, do you want this one. And once it's done, it will send it out to Excel in the background. And it's sent out, one column per group. The export to text is basically the same thing, only it sends them out in a text file with a blank line in between each group of terms. Combine author networks is one of my old favorites. I used to call this the grad student filter. I'll say minimize screen, run faster. What this one does is go through all of the lists of authors or inventors and combines together, kind of merges together any sets of authors that always appear together. So within, or more than, I think it's more than 75% of all their terms are together. It will also filter out any minor authors that only appear with a more frequent author, but don't appear on at least half of that more frequent author's records. So we've gone from the list of almost 700 authors down to a group of 254 clusters of authors, some of which is several people long. But it's a quick way to really cut down an author list. Some people have also tried it as a very basic form of clustering and filtering in things like NLP terms. Let's see, get earliest year does exactly what it says, most useful in a patent data set. A lot of the data sets have this built in nowadays, but there was a time when you would need to calculate it yourself. So in this case, I've got priority years. In a patent, you can have more than one priority year per record. And so this will go through and find the earliest priority year in each set. The get latest year is exactly the same, but going the other direction. It's useful for things like find the most recent family member publication. Make thesaurus is frankly a really handy tool for letting you take any two fields and making it into a change this into that thesaurus. So for example, I can run the make thesaurus, and for my main field I'm saying what do I want the thesaurus to turn things into, in this case country names, and let's start with the company names. So the corporate source, it will change them into a country name. Seems kind of basic, but let's see, org to country. Runs very fast. Now if I am looking at my list of organizations, I can run a thesaurus. Let's find my thesaurus, org to thesaurus file, and this should turn the ones that were matched in the thesaurus at least into country names. And it's also a good way of pointing out which ones were not matched did not have a country name on them originally. Marked unique items is frankly more useful in the context of the new profile table, comparing items. Doing it across an entire list like this is very slow and not terribly useful because you end up with a bunch of one record items being unique to themselves. Matrix row cross product. This is a handy one. Let's see if I can find a good example. Here we go. Let's start with a matrix where the columns are a numeric field. It's sorting correctly because I've got it set to data type number. Now when I run the cross product, what it's going to do is make an Excel table where it multiplies each cell by the column header and then adds them up for each row. These days, that's also something that can more easily be done in the statistics sheet. But it's nice to get it out to Excel sometimes. And hey, charts are always fun. Let's see, create all lists I've already mentioned. Combine all open data sets will do exactly what it says. It's there to kind of get around the limitation of combined data sets where you can only add 2 data sets at a time. If all of the fields line up, and this is a add all fields kind of operation, if you have a bunch of equivalent data sets all open down in the tabs, you can run combine all open data sets and it will run through, it could be 10 or it could be a dozen different data sets and combine them all together. Might take a while, but it will get them and you don't have to show back up to click another button every time one pair is finished. Let's see, let's get back to our list from the downloads page. Let's see, clean Derwent assignees uses the Derwent organization codes. So it's got to be Derwent data, but it will use those organization codes as the basis for cleanup. Let's see, count rows with multiple column values in a matrix does just what it says, and creates a report in Excel of which row, of how many of the rows in that matrix have more than one column, requested by a user for a special study they were doing. And it seemed easy enough to add in. Count frequently plots calculates the ZIF distribution of the terms in the different fields in the data set and plots them on a little chart. Create full coverage group is a kind of fun one. What it will do is read down through a list. Let's see. So it will read through a list and attempt to find the minimum number of terms that will have 100% coverage in the data set. Of course, now that I think about it, I make sure, yes, descriptors clean does have 100% coverage. But it will run through that. It'll also make two passes. It will add terms starting with the first term, and then it will make a second pass, either starting from the top, the bottom, or nowhere, and remove terms and check if after it's removed that term, does the group still have 100% coverage. Let's see. Now, so let's see. So here is our all records group. Yep, there we go. And so it's determined that this is its kind of minimum set to keep all the records. As I said, there's a couple different options. Records group 2. And so, for example, if we do a different set, then we'll end up with a slightly different set of terms. You can even ask it to, once it's made one set of terms, to go back through all of the unselected terms and attempt to make another full coverage group, just as finding different ways to carve up the data set. Let's see, create record table is basically making another compound field, except each row will be a record. And so you can add whichever fields you want. If you want to have title, abstract, publication number in a handy little table in a list view, you can do it that way. Export list terms and groups to Excel is another way of getting your list items and groups out to Excel in a slightly different report format. Export matrix to text is useful for some older network analysis programs like PyGek. It will make a tab delimited text file out of a matrix. Let's see, export title list to text actually was a very old experiment of going out to Word with a set of titles for each group in a field. Field to classification is frankly no longer necessary. There's a option in our build classifications menu that can do this instead and do it much better, frankly. Highlight shared records in matrix is a bit of a tricky one. One of those things people don't often realize in a cross-correlation matrix. Let's say if we were looking at, say, authors, by authors, So in this case, it's going to give a score of each author based on how similar they are to their co-authors. But in this case, just because they have a positive value or a non-zero value in the cell does not mean that they actually have any records. Let's see. Move those. Let me filter it down. I'll probably find a couple. So, yeah, there we go. So here's two authors that have a similar set or a non-zero similarity of co-authors, but they don't actually share any records. So that script will just do some highlighting on the matrix, just like the heat map, to point out which cells actually have records behind them. Make earliest date is like make earliest year, only it does it for well-formatted date fields. Make column cross product and make column sum, very similar to make row cross product, only the number field is in the rows instead of the columns. But that is the quick tour through all the scripts, and I think we're about out of time. Let me check in with our host, and we'll see if we have any time and availability for some Q&A. If not, thank you. It's been my pleasure to give you this very, very whirlwind tour. As I said, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I will be reposting this. Hopefully, maybe even re-recording to speak a little slower so that it's easier to follow along. But again, anytime you need to contact us, that's what the help desk is here for. Have a nice day.